Our next panel is going to be very interesting as well because it's a panel discussion with the oil and gas industry leaders. And we have three of them seated up here before you right now. And what I'm going to do is introduce them by name so you know who's up here. They have name tags as well. But first of all, we have Jack Ekstrom, closest to me from Whiting Oil. Jack, thanks for being here.
You're welcome. Thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, it's good to see you all the time back in the state. Terry Kovacevich from Marathon is next in the middle. Terry's a local guy in Dickinson here with Marathon, so we appreciate Terry being here with us.
Thank you.
And Tim Butts, who I just got to meet from Continental Resources, is working out of their Killdeer office area. He's going to be part of this panel too. And Tim, thank you for being here.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
And our moderator today is somebody that's familiar with most of us. He's a member of our executive committee, and he's also a county commissioner from Billings County, and that's Jim Arthaud. He's the founder and CEO of MBI Energy Services, which is a very successful oil and gas company, very grassroots, that's grown with the industry and has been a great service to our area in terms of employment and bringing further wealth into our counties and our systems here. So we are always happy when a hometown boy makes big and stays with us. So with that, I'd like to introduce Jim Arthaud.
Thanks, Brad. I think I know most of the people in the room. It's going to be fairly informal today. What I would like to do is just mention a few things about the gentlemen up here. I would say, first and foremost, they're all here by choice. None of them were forced to come here. They all like North Dakota. They all like the industry. So.
And we hope it's still that way when it's over, Jim.
Right. You will. I particularly like to tell the story about Terry, though, because when he was offered the job up here, they kind of looked at him like, well, going to North Dakota, they were kind of scared to even ask him if he wanted to go to North Dakota. And he finally told the people, he said, don't you realize I've been traveling from Alaska to UND for the last 4 years, as his daughter was one of the stars of the UND hockey team. And he said, yeah, I'd love to come to North Dakota. Wish the Bakken would have happened about 5 years earlier. So his daughter now is made him a proud grandpa, and she's from Minnesota, so he's one of us now, even though he's originally from Ohio. So, the guys face the same stuff as us as county commissioners and mayors and everybody else does in North Dakota. They deal with infrastructure problems. They deal with too much truck traffic, even though I'm a trucker. But they deal with everything, the housing, the personnel, trying to get locals to work here. So the industry is not unlike cities, counties, schools. They deal with it daily. The three guys up here represent three of the finest oil companies that I know of in North Dakota, and they probably represent well over, got to be over half the production, I'd say, between the combined three of them. Jack's with Whiting Petroleum, which used to be a fairly small independent. Pretty soon they're not going to be an independent. They just keep on doing things good. They're big in our county. We like to see the way Whiting operates in our county in particular. They're one of the biggest in Billings County. They plan things out well. They work around your infrastructure. They visit with you. They talk about their plans so you can understand their needs. And I think probably throughout the state, each one of these companies do it. I know Terry's very active with the Dunn County guys, letting them know what's going on with their plans, how they're going to proceed going forward, and Continental likewise. So you got the like say over 50% of the drilling rigs, probably over 50% of the production, and well over 50% of the land mass in North Dakota in front of you here. So we really want to open it up for questions. I always say there's not a silly question, so ask any question that's ever been on your mind of these guys when we get forward. But I would like to start off a little bit first. Jack, if you just talk a little bit about Whiting Oil and Gas, general, how many rigs you got running, what your production is, and a little bit about your company, and then we'll just go on down the table, and then we'll open it up. I think it'd set it up better.
Sure. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this is North Dakota. I assume that's most of you. That was a joke. That's okay. You can laugh. It's okay. I know Helms isn't here to start it off with an Ole and Lena joke, but we'll have to do our best anyway. The nickel tour of Whiting and the $1.50 tour is right here. I have videos of our operations, and I didn't bring very many, but if you'd like one, you can come up and take one at some point when we're finished, or you can interrupt me right now and come up and take one. It describes almost everything that we do. It's not totally current because it's in production now, the next version of it, but it's pretty informative. Whiting in North Dakota is producing over 100,000 barrels a day gross. We've been an oil company ever since our founding. The company went public for the most recent time in 2003 at the equivalent of $7.75 a share, and I think today it's up over 58. It's taken a very nice run here in the immediate past. Whiting has a particular philosophy, and I think it's reflected in, first of all, the fact that I'm here and that I'm happy to be here, just as everybody at Whiting is happy to be in North Dakota. But the other part of it is we try to reach out to the public as much as we can. Some of you may have heard me on Joel Heidecamp's radio show. I do that once a month. I also do that once a month in Colorado, where we're operating in the Niobrara. If you have questions about Whiting or for Whiting, you can always ask me. You can call on when I'm on the radio if you want. That'll be a week from Tuesday. It's very important to us that you all understand what we do and embrace what we do, because we know that we do what we do only with the permission of the public. Laws can be changed. There are people who are opposed to what we do, and we understand that. We try to win them over, and if we are unable to win them over, we try to at least have the smallest impact on them that we can. We're very proud of what we've done in North Dakota. North Dakota is a great place to operate. I'd like to talk a little bit later about some of the challenges that you'll face down the road, which I discussed with Senator Wardner last night. But I think that's probably enough for now, Jim.
Okay. Thank you, Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Terry Kovacevich, Marathon. I've been here since 2006. Marathon, worldwide oil and gas producing company, been in business approaching 130 years. So we've been around the block. Worldwide production now is about 400 to 450,000 barrels of oil. And
it is a marathon, not a sprint, isn't it? Of
yes.
100 and some years.
Yes, it is a marathon. And I keep looking at the percentage I've worked for Marathon, and it's a high percentage, so I'm getting old. So Marathon Bakken, we're approaching about 50,000 barrels of oil, so it is important to Marathon as a whole as a corporation. We're operating 5 drilling rigs now, have about 400,000 net acres across the state, and not quite as big as the two gentlemen on each side of me, but North Dakota is very important to us from a corporate standpoint, but the other thing North Dakota really helped Marathon on, and many other operating companies, is these resource plays, and this was really our first venture in a resource play. We were able to take all of our lessons learned, whether it was dealing with problems in the community or the technology of drilling these horizontal wells, and we bought acreage positions down in the Eagle Ford Shale and other shale plays, and we've been very successful in the Eagle Ford Shale, and our production down there is approaching 100,000 barrels a day. And many of the similar problems that we faced here across the board, we were able to take those lessons learned and hopefully minimize the impacts in some of the areas down in Texas. But overall, Marathon's glad to be here. It's, as Jack said, it's a great place to work. We want to hear from you, and hope we've been good community neighbors. And I think all three of us up here will say that we're guests in your communities, and we have to earn the privilege to remain in this state. So with that, Jim, I'll just pass it on to Tim, I guess.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Tim Butts. I'm probably the newest member of North Dakota up here. Actually, I just recently came up from the Buffalo field about 10 months ago. I've been playing for Continental for about 16 years now. I started at the bottom of the barrel as a roustabout and worked my way up. It's just kind of a little bit different from what most people are used to. I've been a Continental Resources is a pretty interesting company because they've been here since the start of pretty much since the start of the Bakken, and I watched them actually move up. I watched them move up from Oklahoma into South Dakota and then farther in North Dakota. They've been a very user-friendly company for everywhere they've been, and like my counterparts here, they talked about we are part of the communities, we're part of the neighbors, and it's part of what our company looks at as far as what we want to be. We're not here to come in and just do like a lot of people envision as companies come in, they just want to take over and make their money and go away. No, we're going to be here for a long time, and that's our intent. And a lot of our focus is being that good neighbor thing we talk about, because we're just here for part of it. It's part of the whole community, and how do we affect those areas we're in, and how do we tie into those communities, and make sure that we keep North Dakota doing as well as it's doing as it is, and not be part of the problem, but part of the solution as the future goes forward, to be a part of this good state, even though I am a South Dakota guy, though. But they tell me that when I moved up here, I had to quit making North Dakota jokes. So that's okay, though, because when I come up here, I get to hear South Dakota jokes, too, so it's pretty good.
So I asked Tim, being from Buffalo, South Dakota, if he happens to know Lynn Helms, since that's where Lynn Helms is from. He says, yeah, and besides that, Lynn's boy worked for me down there. So it's actually, the oil and gas industry throughout the United States is amazing how small it is, community-wise, family-wise, people that you know. It's unbelievable. Hate to say this, Terry, but the world becomes a lot smaller the older we get. We know like people in every play throughout the United States, and I think that from my perspective, the unconventional plays in America are just wildly successful for America and the opportunity that they give America. We see what they done for helping our energy independence, but I think more what it's shown us is these unconventional plays. We always, not that there still isn't geologic risk in these plays, but it's taken out one the big factors that people used to have to make when they decide if they're going to drill an oil and gas well was the geology of it. The geologic risk is reduced greatly in these plays, and they actually end up being more of a mining technology, if that's fair to say, guys. And mining, if you look at the history of mining always gets better as the play goes on, just because research and development and technology just always improves. So you extract more, you do things better, you understand it better. So America's got a great future in these unconventional plays. Another thing that I think the uniqueness of these unconventional plays versus conventional plays that I really like to see is, I grew up in the oil field as my father grew up in the oil field, so I've been around it for a lot of years. I used to work for Tennick Oil, which was the big stick play in Billings County. You can see what our production used to be when Lynn Helms had it up there. That was the conventional Mission Canyon play. And we always used to say about conventional plays is they'd drill a 9,400-foot vertical well, they'd give them 1,000 gallons of acid, they'd make 4,000 barrels a day. They were really good wells, but they'd take that money and run to Africa with it, or Siberia with it, or wherever. These unconventional plays, the money stays in the basin. They're hugely service intensive, so the money stays right in North Dakota. I mean, there's some money that goes out, but the jobs stay here. They just take a lot of workforce to do it. So I'm really excited about the unconventional plays across America and North Dakota for America. You see the plastics people coming back. You see the manufacturing coming back. See the steel industry coming back. You just see the fertilizer industry coming back. So great opportunity for America if we don't goof it up somehow, and I don't know how we'd do that. So I think what we'd like to do is just allow interactive. We don't want people being shy. We want you to ask the questions. You can ask the hard questions. You can ask the easy questions, and we'll just get a forum going. If not, you're going to have to sit here and listen to me. So please ask questions.
Have Jack go through what he said he was going to talk about. Jack said he talked to Senator Wardner about some problems.
Okay. Well, Senator Wardner.
Well, I have a question that enhanced recovery for all three of them. What's on the planning? What's on the planning board for enhanced recovery as these fields mature and get older? Any plans, and what kind of impacts can we expect?
Oh, it's going to be a walk in the park. The amazing thing is, Rich, as you know, the older I get, the narrower my view is of almost everything. I would tell you that the typical cycle runs something like initial drilling to hold, leases, develop all of the leases that you have, take stock of the technology as you move through time, probably do some refracs. In North Dakota, you've got some additional zones to be explored, so those come after you've pretty much identified the opportunity in the zones that we're working in now, like the Bakken and the Three Forks, and the Sanish Sand, of course, which, by the way, Whiting discovered, not to tip our own hats or anything, but we did. And then you have water floods and perhaps CO2. I understand at this particular point that it doesn't look highly prospective for a CO2 operation. And the way the government's behaving, we may not be emitting any more CO2 if they have their way. We'll all have to stop breathing. But that's pretty much the cycle. And as I told you last night, I talked to a geologist who is more than just a rock clicker. I mean, he's really a geologist. And he asked, or I asked, that's opposed to squareheads who are the engineers.
Time to cut him off, engineer next to him.
At Whiting, we're pretty loose with our terms, so. You don't want to hear what some of us are called. We've been doing an oil industry in this country since 1859, when Colonel Drake drilled the first well near Titusville, Pennsylvania, and that's a long time. But the way technology is accelerating, he was asked, where are we, if this was a baseball game, where are we, what inning are we in the oil and gas industry? Because a lot of people have had this peak oil and it's all over and it's going away and all of that. And he said, based on the technology advances that I've seen, I would say that we're just getting ready to step into the batter's box for batting practice. So that gives you an idea of how long this is going to last. It's not 20 years, 40 years, 80 years. It's a long, long time. And we know that of all of the oil that we've discovered in the world, all of the oil that's been discovered so far, we've recovered maybe, what, 8% of it, I think is the number, somewhere less than 10%. So 90% of what we've discovered has not been produced to the benefit of the population of the earth. And I think, as I said, the squareheads will keep working on that and try to get it out of the ground, and we're going to have an oil industry in this country and around the world for a long, long time.
Yeah, I think on the enhanced recovery, Jack covered the key points there, but all the operators, it's single-digit recovery now, maybe 10, 12% on the highest, depending on what company you are. All of us are doing research and development for enhanced recovery. I think there's some pilots that's been happen, and there's going to be more of that. But the size of the prize remaining in the ground here in the Williston Basin in the Bakken Three Forks is huge. And just like the fracturing technology, when we all started out, it was open hole fracture treatment to begin with. Recoveries were probably 100 to 200,000 a well, depending on where you were in the reservoir. And over a period of 5 short years, that increased significantly to now, I think the average in North Dakota is somewhere around 600,000, but there's many wells recovering more than 1 million barrels. So there's a tremendous amount of work point forward here from the research and technology to recover the rest or part of the rest. 1% of billions of barrels of oil is a huge target for all of us to go after, and we're going to go after it. So it will be, as Jack mentioned, a long time here until we, figure it out. And even if we do figure it out, whether it's CO2, we're going to make that better with time as we learn and understand the reservoir.
Yeah, Senator, kind of a segue to that, which is kind of interesting. you know they're going to figure it out. They're not going to leave that much oil in the ground. But with that being said, you know, the University of North Dakota used to have a petroleum engineering department, and we got to thank Harold Hammond. Continental Resources made the donation to the University of North Dakota to start the petroleum engineering department back up. And with that being said, Terry chairs that department at the University of North Dakota. So, I mean, we're bringing all that stuff back home. Like I said, the unconventional plays just have such a longevity that we can start working on those issues. Shouldn't say issues, opportunities locally, and then each one of these guys have state-of-the-art R&D centers. And Continental, you know, how Harold made his first bang in North Dakota was the horizontal and the flooding down there and the fire flooding. So you can go, there's many different ways of getting secondary and tertiary recovery. And what Jack and Terry were alluding to earlier, Halliburton's a pretty big customer of ours on the proppant side of things, and they say that the proppant market on the refracs is going to be way more than initial. So you can pretty well figure just about every one of these wells will probably be refract, so you get some more boost there too. So I think Lynn Helms is pretty conservative when he says $1.6 million. Goldman Sachs just come out with a report yesterday. They toured North Dakota, came out with a report yesterday, and they say peak at 2.2 million with their stuff. And pretty smart guys. So.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies are already taking secondary recovery into thought. As they do their drilling programs, I think they're looking at it and how do we, in the long term, eventually start converting wells that were producers into injectors of some kind, so secondary recovery. Yeah, it's definitely in the plans. Just the time frame is uncertain at this time, I'm sure.
Senator.
Yeah, question for any of you. We've gone through one unitization down in Bowman County, and they're talking about putting in another one. But when you coordinate that, when you're looking at the roads that you have and what needs to be done before they start doing this, would sure be beneficial to a county commissioner when they look at your road projects that have to be done first. I went through this when we had the water injection, and you couldn't hardly keep up. It was almost a nightmare for the people. If we could have sat down and said, here's where we're going to be drilling all these wells, here's the main roads, here's the secondary roads, it would have been a lot easier to coordinate that so it was good for the industry and good for the people that live there. And do you do that, or ever take the time to do that with the county commissioner at a meeting or something so they can sit down and look at long-term planning for that?
I think just since I've been here since the start of the play, we have done it from day one. We've tried to attend commission meetings, give updates in where we're drilling, where activity. And what I've seen is the rest of the industry, a lot of them have started to engage more with the county commissioners, and I think it's a win-win situation because the industry is trying to do some forward planning, and none of us 7 years ago thought we were going to be talking about 8, 12, 16 wells in a drilling unit. Most of us started out with the thought of maybe 1 or 2 in these 1,280 acre spacing, and so it has rapidly expanded. I think all three of us up here would say the key for us to minimize the infrastructure impacts is to make sure we communicate the best we can with all the political subdivisions that we deal with, whether it's county, township, tribal, or state. I think most of industry is all in on that now.
I think, actually, this is funny you brought this up because I just actually left Mike Zimmerman's office. He's the county road superintendent for Dunn County. Operators are starting to become more county friendly. We used to think big things more in bigger pictures, but and we're going to get on board with how can we help each other. I'm fully aware of what you're talking about unitization because I come from the Buffalo field where they are unitized and it's a little bit different world dealing with units. But definitely the operators are getting on board with how do we support those counties, how can we, for a better term, help each other out with the things we have available. Some of the stuff we just getting questioned is how do we do it best. So,
well, we got here pretty early in the play, as I recall, and to your point about county commissioners, we've had such a great relationship in Montreal County with Dave Heenick that we've taken him to Washington, D.C. with us to talk to the less knowledgeable members of Congress, and that would be just about all of them except the North Dakota delegation. So our relationship there has been very, very good, and with Mike Heenick as well, the mayor of Stanley. And I'm going to put in a word here for one of our competitors who can't be here because his company won't let him talk, even though he's incredibly erudite. EOG built a large facility in Montreal County, and they had the opportunity to do it either within the city limits of Stanley or outside the city limits of Stanley and avoid the costs of being within the municipality. So they made the conscious decision to build their facility within the town limits of Stanley, become part of their tax base, and they laid all of their own utilities at their own expense, which they did not have to do. My hat is off to my compatriot Eric DeLay in particular, and EOG in general, for that kind of spirit, which I think all of us share when we think about North Dakota, because you all have been so terrific to us. It really is a two-way street, and if people are difficult, it's a little less difficult in corporate headquarters to get things done that we need to get done. But I think the spirit of cooperation here is almost without parallel. I can't think of any place that we'd rather do business. From the top of the food chain, your delegation in Washington, D.C., the governor, the lieutenant governor, your county commissioners, your state representatives and senators, I think all understand the value to this, and you had people escaping this state, leaving and not coming back. Now that's in reverse. They're coming back, they're not leaving. And that's a testimonial to you, and that's what we feel about North Dakota. So I think if a county commissioner has a problem or doesn't understand, I can't imagine one of our companies or any of the other ones I know, well, maybe one. There's always an exception, that wouldn't willingly share whatever plans we have. You have to understand as well that every well that we drill, in effect, is an exploratory well or is an R&D project, because we take what we learn from that well and apply it to the next one. So what we learn may take us in a different direction than we thought we were going. But what we're trying to do is develop the resources efficiently and as quickly as we can for the benefit of our shareholders and the benefit of the royalty owners.
Senator, I think these guys would also like to put that one maybe back in the senator's laps a little bit. If the unitization laws would be a little different in North Dakota, it'd probably make it a lot easier for them to plan a unit, because one thing a unit does is gives you orderly development of a resource, which includes your infrastructure, your resource in the ground, the whole thing. So, you know, you let a play get to the maturity as far as it gets without the people having the ability to form units. It makes their jobs difficult, checkerboard and across there. So you guys got to go back the next session and relook at your unit laws and help these guys out. It helps on you talk about the natural gas flaring. What's the biggest problem with natural gas flaring that I hear and see is because you can't get infrastructure in the ground. How come you can't get infrastructure in the ground? Well, you're dealing with checkerboard, you're dealing with many different landowners. If you do it in a unit in an orderly fashion, you take that part of that puzzle away and you allow the infrastructure to go in a lot faster. Plus it saves the resource in the ground. I mean, the Little Knife Field, North Dakota is a perfect example of a wasted resource in the ground because you couldn't get it water flooded because of the unit rules. It hit bubble point, you left all that oil in the ground, and you know, it's not the proper thing to do for reservoir management.
Well, as our Oriental friends would say, unitization make us double happy.
Yeah.
That makes our life a lot easier. But I understand landowners are not, especially surface owners or mineral interest owners, either one, are not all that excited about unitization, and you can start some real dogfights when you bring that up, especially in Texas.
Yeah, I think if you look back, if 5 years or 10 years from now, if you look back and talk to those same royalty owners, they'd go, man, I wish we had agreed to that unit. It'd be a lot more orderly, it'd be more fair, it'd be more equitable. It wouldn't be so chaotic.
What part of that is fun?
Yeah.
You know, part of that unitization thing does too, the senator's question about enhanced secondary recovery, that does benefit that piece also.
Yeah,
It makes it a lot
absolutely.
simpler.
Yeah, you go to some states, it's not a question of the royalty owner, it's the question of what the reservoir is responding. If the reservoir is not responding under natural and it's getting to be what they call a bubble point, the states say you're going to shut that well in, you're not producing anymore until you maintain your reservoir. So it should be actually a reservoir, it should be an engineering reservoir question is how you maintain the reservoir to protect your resource, in my opinion. But. Yes, sir, Ron. Yeah, it's right behind you.
Probably not quite a question, more of a statement, but we have three individuals of this stature up here. We've had, I'm Ron Anderson from McKenzie County. We've had 2 really wet years in 2011 and 13. Our gravel roads have taken quite a beating.
We had one in Colorado here recently.
Yeah, you
might
did.
have heard about it.
I might have heard about that.
It was in
yeah.
the papers.
Well, then the truck traffic stopped, though. No, and we've met with 10, 12 oil companies twice this spring, spring and summer, and we didn't have quite the stature of people at that meeting that we have here. That's why I want to bring this up. And that when these kind of events come about, and I must congratulate Whiting because they pulled their trucks before we did. And, but we need a little more cooperation on, if there's a truck stuck in the middle of a county road, let's shut it down rather than pull it on through. And that's what was going on. A week ago that happened on a road that we had just fixed. And they kept that move going, that rig move going, and so we finally had to shut it down. We did shut down the county for 1 day. It doesn't take long to dry out. And had 50% cooperation, like I say, Whiting and taking all theirs. I realize a lot of those are independents and aggregate haulers. But even as oil companies, you have the hammer over them. If you say, we're not bringing that into that location that day, they're done. And so I guess a little reaction, but I was just asking for a little more cooperation in that direction.
It looks like I don't have anything to say on this one. So.
Yeah, it looks like, yeah.
If I were you, I would say if I had a hammer, I would hammer in the morning.
No, I'll pass the buck because we shut down for 3 weeks in May, shut all our frac crews down, shut a lot of our drilling rigs. We were on multi-well pads, will help rig moves if you can properly plan and keep the rig moves. But, you know, what I tell my people is that Marathon and others, we're only as good as the worst operator in the state. And regardless of what we get up here and say and do, we're still going to have those issues. But what I do see with an industry, with our industry association meetings talking about these issues that you are not exposed to, that are sharing the same feelings that you have, that we have to do a better job in self-policing ourselves. Are we going to get 100%? No. Are we going to get 80%? Maybe that's a target, but we know we have a lot of work to do, and I can tell you there's a lot of dedicated and committed companies here to try to do it right, and we just need to try to minimize those impacts in our counties. So are we there yet? No. We got a lot of work to do, and it's going to be a long journey, I think.
So if it's not you and it's not me, it must be all Tim's fault.
Okay.
Tim, what did you do?
Actually, I'm very aware of the situation he was talking about because I got the phone call. But just to be aware of that, and we didn't have a problem shutting down from the production side. By the way, I'm a production superintendent out of the Killdeer office. I'm not, I don't quite fall higher on the food chain, but I'm very locally here. Yeah, we took the same call from McKenzie County, and we didn't have a problem shutting in and reducing all of our traffic on those roads in those areas up there, and we're very aware of your situation. And matter of fact, I've just seen the agreements come across my desk to pick up maintenance on some of your county roads up there in some of those areas. We're very cognizant, and we are continue to be, since I get not the short term, but the long term side of multiple years of dealing with the counties, even after the drilling programs end. We definitely will we participated and shut in wells if we needed to, and we stopped our truck traffic just as you guys need to, no matter which county it's going to be in. It should happen this year is McKenzie, next year it could be done. It's hard to say. Yeah, we have to work together on that because a lot of people don't realize that, but we do what it costs to put one of them roads back together after you tear it apart, and it's not worth. We can be a little more proactive out front, and we take that same approach, and we agree. Granted, I'm about 60 miles away from where you're driving through in the county areas you're talking about, but when we get the call, we definitely, or we anticipate you're going to be shut down, we take those proactive actions we need to make sure we don't need to put trucks back on them roads at all. So we don't have a problem with being user-friendly in that aspect.
Just don't get stuck in front of Ron's house.
No. But yeah, because we shut down last year. Same thing. When we got the call, we stopped. All of our trucking stopped on those roads.
It is devastating to the counties, though. I'm obviously own a trucking company, so we're part of the problem also. But what I tell our county road superintendent is we do put chains on those trucks for a reason. Now you have to chain up once in a while, and you can tear up a little bit of the surface of it. But if you're starting to get axle deep, shut the roads down. I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, so, it's just have to understand what you're doing and do that. But how many millions of dollars did you guys have to replace in that one shot?
We should have replaced 50 million, but about 10.
Rich wouldn't give you the other 40?
No.
Jim, if I could, I'd like to introduce a topic that I think my fellows up here would like to comment on, and
absolutely,
if that's okay with you.
Yep.
Sorry to take time from questions, but over the next 3 years, Whiting expects to have a flat rig count of about 18, somewhere in that vicinity. But we're going to drill as many or more wells because we're becoming more efficient. And I'm guessing that in the next 3 to 5 years that the gentleman next to me would probably echo that. But what I want to talk about briefly is the competition that you're going to face and that you are beginning to face right now. We have a fairly substantial development going on in Colorado despite the rain. And our boss said yesterday on a tour with the investment community that we might ramp that up to as many as 30 rigs. That's a lot of rigs in northeast Colorado. The value of that resource could be, on an ultimate recovery basis, probably half again what we expect to get out of the Bakken from the acreage that we have here on a per well basis or a per unit basis. You have EOG focusing more on the Eagle Ford, and I'm just telling you anecdotally because I don't speak for EOG, but I'll tell you what I know that they're doing is they're focusing on the Eagle Ford and not focusing as much on the Bakken. And part of the problem that you all have here is that you have a very high severance tax. And what happens, regardless of where you are, could be in Illinois, God forbid, but it could be in Illinois. Whatever the tax regime is and whatever the EURs are in a given well and whatever the costs are of operating, and tax is a large factor there because a lot of the other costs are fairly similar. You take what you expect for a capital expenditure budget and you draw a line. And anything that doesn't meet the return that you expect out of the expenditures that you have to spend isn't going to get drilled. The money's not going to be spent there. Now, Whiting is spending $1.3 billion this year in North Dakota. But with the competition that you all are going to have from Colorado, the tax rate down there is about 5%. So you've got that's a big differential. Is that going to matter now? I don't think so. Is it going to matter in 2 years or 3 years? Probably not. But down the road, if that severance tax that you have does not find some kind of creative way to be fixed, you are going to face competition, more competition from the Eagle Ford and from other plays where we have, at the moment, 3 stealth plays that I can't really tell you about, but will be revealed probably in our year-end reporting that we think are highly prospective, and none of those are in North Dakota. It doesn't mean that North Dakota is bad. North Dakota is great. But I'm just raising a warning flag for you that the money that you're getting in severance tax right now in the full flush and blush of this boom is endangered down the road because of the competition from states that have lower tax rates. You must compete on that level. I've had this discussion with the governor and with the governor's representative and with your elected officials in Washington talking about federal taxes. So I raised that warning flag for you, and I'd like to hear what Terry and Tim think about this down the road. They may tell me I'm all wet, but being from Colorado and 11 inches of rain at my house, I probably am. So what do you guys think?
No, I think companies different size, different corporations, we're all competing within internally. For my asset here is the Bakken asset. I compete for capital dollars against our Eagleford, against our other worldwide projects. And the economics, when you stack them up, you know, we do have a program here, and we're about $800 million this year. But tax are one big component of that, and how these individual well economics are calculated. And it's based on the opportunity at the time. And as Jack said, if 3 more come into play for a company like Whiting, they're going to take that into account in taxes, and you're going to operate in a more fiscally friendly place when you stack up if the resource itself is equal. So it is a concern that needs to be addressed. I know there's been a lot of hard work on it the last legislative session.
You bet.
And we appreciate the people that worked on it. Unfortunately, it didn't get there, but it's still going to be an issue that the industry is going to raise here in the future.
And before you answer, Tim, I just wanted to tell you, when I was on Heidkamp's radio show, I had a guy call me, and it was the typical average person saying, oil companies always complain about taxes. It's not a complaint. Be assured, we are happy to pay whatever it is that makes this work. I'm just telling you the way the decision process works within Whiting, and I'm sure within Marathon and Continental, is that you do an objective assessment of what the best returns are, and anything below that line, it's not going to happen. This clearly is not below the line, and it won't be for quite a while. I'm just telling you that at some point you might hear this, and if you see activity start to decline, you can bet that if this particular element has not changed, that will be a factor. So I'm sorry, Tim, go ahead.
No, that's all good, Jack. Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's definitely has an effect as any operator of the taxes and dealing with severance. It has an effect, but a majority of our production right now at Continental is up here. I mean, and like our counterparts, I mean, we're all going to be here for a while. But as far as asset allocation in the future, it's hard to say which direction they go for sure. And that will play into it. So
I would also tell you that what plays a role is whether you're on federal, state, or private. Mm-hmm. We have a stated charge in Whiting to avoid federal acreage at all costs, because you can't afford the delays in permits that take a year, or the difficulty, even if they don't own the surface, they will tell you that you can't get a permit even though all they own is minerals. So the federal government is foregoing the revenue that they could have, and I think they need it, because they because they have this bureaucracy that you have to drag along kicking and screaming to try to drill a well and give them the money that they're entitled to. It's crazy, but that's the way it is. So our charge is avoid the reservation, avoid tribal lands, and avoid federal lands if you possibly can, just because of the bureaucratic morass that is involved when you do that.
How would you like to be a county commissioner as 50% federal?
Here's some bamboo to put under my nails first.
I don't know if this, oh yeah, it's on. First of all, I want to tell you three guys that my exposure to this organization for the last 15 years has helped me to become educated, not about what just we do in our own little worlds, but what you do as well, and I appreciate that, especially you're here today to talk about it. But what I tell my constituents when they say, why doesn't the oil company fix this road that they just tore up? And I always tell them, the first thing you need to understand is they've already paid for that damage. It's an 11.5% tax. The problem is not them not paying it and them not fixing the road. It's an allocation issue. Money goes to Bismarck. It was a payment in lieu of taxes, but it's actually acting more as a severance tax because the state keeps about 85 to 90% of that tax money as if it was a severance. So it's not, I'm telling constituents, I hope everybody in here is, it's not the oil company's fault. You're paying for the damage. It's an allocation issue. But my follow-up to that, I'm a little bit concerned about what you just said, Jack, from the sense that we came to the legislature this last session and got great things accomplished with Senator Wardner and Senator Bowman's help, everybody in this room working together. And I'll applaud this association for doing that. But just my example of Williston, they said, the majority leader in the House always says, bring us your list. What's your list of impacts? Bring us your list. Well, the city of Williston put our list out there, and it was $625 million in the next 6 years. And those numbers, the impacts don't go away. They just get more and bigger. And then we can back that up with our figures. My point to you and my concern to you is this. We got funded about $60 million on that $625 million list. We took a bond rating reduction from the rating agencies because we had that list, and they were concerned that it was going to deplete our resources to even handle what's going on. So it's costing me now on the bond issue side as well. So there's some real impacts there. My point is that what I would ask you to do in your companies, and I think you do this already behind the scenes, but please, in the next legislative session, step up and be more public in our hearing processes with the representatives, with the senators, with the governor's office, and support our needs as well. Because if it's true that we're going to start seeing a lack of effort on the company's part as this severance tax stays as high as it is and starts to go away, I know I'm going to get even less money at that point, because of what the state needs are for everywhere else. We need your help now, and I know if I can just ask you to, have Ron Ness as your industry spokesman, be even more aggressive in help, please.
Well, we're going to try to get some wood chippers to reduce the delegation from Fargo and Grand Forks in the State House.
Yeah. I'd like to make one point what Jack says, because from a layman's perspective, we deal with it all the time when we watch competition for money for these plays. I mean, Continental's got Scoop play, Jack's got the Niobrara play, Terry's got the Eagleford play. We see every one of those companies' budgets drop. I mean, Marathon was, 10 rigs last year, down to 5. We see that all the time from a service company perspective. And everybody, as a layperson, thinks that the oil companies have all this money. Every one of these companies that are sitting up there go to the public markets for money. These unconventional plays are so cash intensive. These guys stay cash negative probably for the life of these plays. They're great internal rates of returns, but they're cash negative plays for forever and ever because they have such huge drilling inventories. It's infinite, just never ends. So we all think that they make these choices because of taxes, whatever. It's competition for dollars. It really, really is, and you see it all the time. Say Terry's losing his money to the Eagleford now. I mean, might be more reasons, or maybe capturing a leasehold or whatever, but they all go back to borrow money to do these plays. So they really do, when they say that 11.5% is tough. It is tough. You take that right off the top. It's a tough one to take. It's not off the bottom.
Jim, it is hard for the public to comprehend that you can actually run a business like this. But our capital expenditure budget this year was somewhere around $2.3 billion. Our cash flow is 1.9.
Yeah.
There's 400 million shortfall right there that we go to capital markets for. Well, we just did some refinancing, and that's really helpful. But the way the company is valued is not by necessarily its net profits or although a lot of the investors follow cash flow per share, the real point is, did you grow your reserves? And if you're always consuming yourself in oil and gas, and that's why you have a depletion allowance. So if you produce, let's say you produced 500,000 barrels a year, let's just say that. The value of your company goes down if you didn't increase your reserves by at least 500,001 barrels because you've consumed yourself. So what you're trying to do is replace your production, and you have to spend a lot of money to do that. I think last year our reserve replacement rate was, I don't really remember the number, but I think it was like 240% or something like that. I could be wrong, please don't quote me on it, but these companies are doing the same thing because that production that you pulled out of the ground and you sold is production that's never coming back. So you have to go find some more, and hopefully with the money that you're spending, find a lot more than what you produced. That's why that tax regime is so important, because that efficiency of capital is what drives your business. So, I mean, that pretty much works for you guys, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Texas or whatever. So we just use 40% of that. It comes out to 48,000 barrels a day times $100. It's for just about $5 million a day times 365, a little under $200 million a day that is generated in new wealth. And if you've ever been around the Forest Service when they talk about new wealth, recycled wealth, that type of wealth, new wealth is huge. I mean, $200 million worth of John Deere tractors, Chevy pickups, new houses, a tremendous amount of new wealth is being generated in North Dakota every day. And people just aren't even coming close to seeing the multiplier effects out of that. We see it on the sales tax, we see it on the income tax, we just see it everywhere. So you don't really hear about that or see that, but it's just a phenomenal number that I look at every day and go, it's unbelievable what we're going to do with all that wealth. With that, I think we got time for one more question, and then we got to wrap if somebody's got one. Yes, John.
Just quick, Jack, going back to you, the recent announcement on the CO2 capture, there was a huge impact for the coal industry with that. They've also referenced the refinery industry and natural gas plants. What do you see happening that you're in the big growth with natural gas development in North Dakota with that? So what's going to be the effect of that?
Well, it's tough to smarten up a chump, you know. And the EPA has pretty much cornered the market on those. One of the things that we're doing is in Texas, we're part of the Texas Clean Energy Project. And what that involves, believe it or not, is a coal-fired power plant that's built in proximity to an oil field. And we're capturing the CO2 on site. It never leaves the building. And we're injecting it directly into our Northward Estes field, or we're going to, when it's built, inject it into our Northward Estes field, which is a CO2 recovery project. Those are very expensive. I mean, it is a black hole up front. But you can produce electricity, you could produce zero emissions diesel out of coal. I mean, the South Africans have done it for a long time with the Fischer-Tropsch method. It is very effective if it's done on the right scale. I don't know that North Dakota is a good prospect for CO2. The way the technology moves, it could very well be, but in today's world, not so much. I mean, it's hard for me to believe that CO2 is actually a problem when that's what trees used to grow, and we've got more trees now in this country than we did when the Pilgrims landed here. So we've been growing those like Carter sells liver pills. I'm sorry, I don't see the problem, but the EPA is driven by people that have this environmental religion that if oil and gas and coal and nuclear do it, it must be bad. I don't agree with that, and I fight it every day, every chance I get. I am hopeful that this project is viable and works really well, because there's nothing they hate more than capturing CO2 to produce more oil. I'm just perverse enough to love that. So I don't know what the answer is. I mean, elections matter. We got one coming up here in about a year, and we got another one 2 years after that. And you know, things can change. I mean, we've had a lot of things change over time. So I recommend assessing your options and voting your conscience.
All right. Agree. I think one thing that we should take away from this, go ahead, sir.
Hi, this question is for Jack. This is Brian Horwath of the Dickinson Press. What would be, in your mind, a realistic tax rate that you could work with in North Dakota?
I would look at every other producing state and look at what their tax regime looks like. I would do a side-by-side and compare what they do with what you do. And I would model myself after the median in there. You have a lot of money flowing into the state, and it's a great thing that you're capturing it. I would not recommend, personally, having worked Alaska, I would not recommend a permanent fund where you give checks to people. I don't think that's a good idea, because you're going to get a lot of hangers-on who move here just for the check, and they'll be on welfare and they'll take the check too. I very strongly recommend analysis by your tax division here of what the other tax regimes are that tax this industry or other extractive industries, and try to find yourself somewhere in the middle or to the high middle of those, because that's something the industry is used to. This 11.5% is really an outlier, and it works fine now. I mean, and I don't think there's anybody at this table that isn't happy to be here and willingly pays it. But down the road, it is going to be a problem. I'm convinced of that.
Could you put a number if it's not 11?
I'd say somewhere around 5. But I think your tax division should analyze the most effective tax regimes. Obviously, Texas has worked very well. Oklahoma, Louisiana, all of those states have advocated and advanced the cause of oil and gas within their borders. And I think their tax regimes are fair. This tax regime is generally viewed as not being fair. And that's not pejorative in any way, but that's just a fact of life. You go, wow, that's a big number. And so we worked on it, and it didn't work. I mean, you've got a lot of different interests in Fargo and in Grand Forks and Bismarck that aren't impacted the way people are out here. And let's face it, they're not very fair about it. But they don't have to be. They're not here. So that's my recommendation. I apologize if I'm blunt and direct, but it saves a lot of time. In my opinion, I feel like I'm doing you a disservice if I don't tell you exactly what I think. And if you listen to Heidkamp, you'll probably hear that too. Sometimes he's not very happy with me, but that's okay if you're known by the quality of your enemies. So.
Okay, this is it. One more question, Lynn.
Lynn James from the city of Bowman. And when you're talking about the tax structure, I'm curious if, for example, in Colorado, how do I want to say it? We as taxing entities here do not have the right to assess property tax to oil and gas infrastructure.
Property taxes in Colorado are credited against your income taxes. So you get it's like a 90% credit, I believe the number is, property tax credit against your corporate income tax. So that's the way it balances. So if your property tax, if you're not paying a lot of property tax, you don't get the credit against your income tax. You're going to pay one or the other,
okay,
but not both. So,
because our tax structure for you folks, the 5.5 or the 5% is what supports us, where we've given up the right to property tax.
I understand.
And so that's a concern for an elected official.
Sure, and well, it should be. I understand that. And I don't think there's any argument here.
That's why we got to do what Brad says, work together on the solution to reduce theirs and get us more.
Agreed.
I think that one of the things that we can take away is these guys are here to stay. They're good companies. There's going to be a lot of wells drilled. Anything that we can do, it gets simpler and better as plays get more mature. People understand more. I think that we can look to the upside, not the downside, from this point forward. In my opinion. Fair, guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You want a video? They're right here.
Before they leave, I want to give Jim a little thank you card for presenting today. Jack, one for you as well. Small token of our appreciation.
Is that good in the pro shop?
I also want to close before they leave and just let you know that these 3 companies are also leaders in innovation and expansion of the resource development state. Just a couple things I know about is that Whiting has expanded. They did the pronghorn, and they were the first ones really to do the Sanish and pronghorn, but they're also into Red River development out in Golden Valley County, which is a new thing. Looks like it's a success for them at this point and continuing. Marathon is now testing horizontal Tyler prospects in Slope County. So that's an expansion, and Continental has been the most aggressive probably in defining and testing the lower four benches play in the Three Forks design. So not only are they here harvesting what they've found early on, but they're expanding and trying to find more for us as well. So that'll be good for the state, and hopefully it's good for them because you're good corporate citizens. We appreciate your presence. Thanks. And you're all welcome to lunch too. I hope you can stay. At this point, we had a couple of speakers lined up in case we need them, but I think what we'll do is going to take a few minutes to shift into the lunch area. So I've got 11:50 right now. Hopefully they're serving lunch right at noon. So if you can go in there, grab your lunch, get your place to sit, and we'll have some further presentations over the lunch.